So with Rugrats Go Wild, I remembered being pretty excited. Well, first off, a little brief history. When the movie was first announced, it actually wasn't going to be called Rugrats Go Wild. It was going to be called The Rugrats Meet the Wild Thornberrys. And even then, there was a trailer that actually had the title The Rugrats Meet the Wild Thornberrys. I guess they changed it to Rugrats Go Wild, I suppose, because normally it was a shorter title, but maybe because the focus is more on Rugrats than it is on the Wild Thornberrys. Now, granted, in a crossover movie, you need balance between both. I mean, granted, with crossovers on Nickelodeon, I'd say that this is probably the most successful. I didn't particularly care for My Party with Victorious, and while I enjoyed The Haunted Thundermans, I feel like that's only a half-hour special, and actually, no, I will say The Haunted Thundermans is better than this. I remembered being really, really excited to see this movie when it first came out, and, well, even though I liked it when it first came out, it didn't have the emotional impact I wish it had. Here's the plot. At about the time that Angelica is telling Tommy he'll just be a backyard baby and he'll never grow up to be like his idol Nigel Thornberry, played again by Tim Curry, the adults are planning on bringing the babies aboard a special Lipschitz cruise where the babies will be put in child care while they'll all be going off to do their own thing on the ship. However, without everybody's consent, Stu Pickles has actually not bought the tickets and instead rented a ship so that they could all sail on the seas together. Obviously, the adults are not pleased in the slightest by this development, and they're even less happy with Stu when the ship capsizes as a result of a giant storm and they end up stranded on a desert island. Hey, even Susie's along for the ride with them, although her parents and none of her family is. Her parents are going on doing two other things at the same time. I don't remember. And I did rewatch the movie recently. It's not important. So while the adults are trying to figure out a means of keeping order, and at the same time, all of them are giving Stu the cold shoulder because they hold him completely responsible for what's happened, the babies set off hoping to find Nigel in order to try to fix everything and get everybody back home. However, and it just so happens that Nigel and his family are on the exact same islands that they've gotten stranded in. Gee, serendipity at its finest. And the babies manage to find him, only for Nigel to accidentally fall as he's making his way to them, get in the head with a coconut, and develop amnesia thinking he's a 3-year-old. Meanwhile, Spike sets off to find them, and encounters Eliza, played again by Lacey Cuthbert, and Darwin, but also encounters a clouded leopard by the name of Siri, voiced by Chrissy Hine, and now it's a race to save the babies, although the babies are trying to figure out their own way back home, and other interactions between the Thornberrys and the babies take place. Can everything work out itself out in the end? So, yeah, like I said, this isn't for a concept of a film. It's a great idea, and you would think with the success of the first two Rugrats movies and with the success of the Wild Thornberrys movie, it would have turned out well. But at the same time, well, there is certainly more of an element of this being a Rugrats movie. I think it's not quite taking itself seriously. It's just hoping that it's playing off the elements of the fact that, hey, you have all these main characters from these two shows who are produced by the same animation company, Klasky Csupo, in the same movie. It's going to write itself. Well, it should kind of write itself, but at the same time it feels like it doesn't. So, I think that other problem... a lot of people want to forget this movie exists. I'm not one of those people. I acknowledge it. I've seen it. I'm unhappy that I saw it. I'm glad I saw it. I mean, the fact that, granted, it could have been that the reason that I had different expectations. This was at an age where I suppose I started to develop expectations going into movies. Maybe not so much as I did a few years later, but at this time, well, after the last two Rugrats movies, I'd hoped for something that was along the same kind of adventurous lines, and I just didn't quite get this vibe. The climax of the movie isn't dealing with a big bad the way the first two did. It's dealing with saving the babies and Nigel from running out of oxygen at the bottom of the not ocean but the sea when the bathysphere ends up stranded on the ocean floor. And yeah, that's all good and well, but at the same time, I just feel like while there is a threat there of danger, it doesn't still have the same impact that something like Scar Snout or Coco had with the previous two movies, or with, if we're taking Wild Thornberrys movie into account, what Brie and Sloan Blackburn had. I'd say that if you fleshed out Siri more, you really could have had something there, considering the fact that they're acknowledging the animal, that because Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys share the same universe, that means animals are sentient, and that means Scar Snout knew he was hunting human babies and was doing so gleefully, not to mention trying to kill their dog when he was getting in the way and doing so very gleefully. And it's sickening, and like, you wish that you could get that same feeling, but at the same time I can understand why they kind of played it safe. And yeah, at the same time they didn't, because this is PG, just mainly for the crude humor, while the other two were G, in spite of having humor that was not as crude, but still pretty crude. Anyway, and another issue I have with the film is it seems to drop arcs as well, or at the least not follow through with them completely. For one thing, you have the adults getting mad at Stu, and they do kind of throughout the film, having gotten mad at Stu very early on in the film and seeming to be there, and then you get the vibe by the end that when Stu's idea is successful in rescuing the babies, they're not so mad with him anymore, but they don't take the time to say we're sorry. They're sorry for like giving him such a hard time about it and realizing he was right. In fact, I can't tell if by the end, when they're all on the Lipschitz cruise, the Rugrats clan, babies and adults, and Wild Thornberrys clan, I can't tell if they are trying to spend more time together and not just doing all the routine activities they did before. I know I'm giving away a lot here, but I kind of feel that a lot of the issues the movie has are spread throughout. They have an arc and also other arcs, I feel like it's good that the movie's taking on so much, but at the same time it feels overstuffed because it is taking on so much, and it's not spending more time on just a few things. It's spending a small amount of time on a lot of things. You have Angelica trying to convince the babies to make her an island princess and become her slaves. That fails. Results in her spending time with Debbie and trying to become more bossy based on spending time around her. And then you have Donnie switching clothing with Chuckie, and Chuckie trying to figure out how to be braver. And yet, also at the same time, the babies seem so excited about going out into the jungle that they don't notice Chuckie's gone right away. And when Donnie shows up, they don't recognize. I mean, granted, I could forgive these things if they were presented. Granted, I'm not mad at these things in the slightest. I just feel like this is a lot this movie's taken on, and yet at the same time, it's doing it in such a minimalistic way. And above all things, let's talk about Spike. Because Eliza's in the movie and because she can talk to animals, it means we get to finally hear Spike talk for the first time, hear his thoughts, and Bruce Willis does his voice. He does a good job, but at the same time, I didn't quite. I got the vibe of Spike, and yet I kind of didn't. It's tricky because, like, how do you write for a dog, dialogue for a dog who up to this point has never had a single thing to say because he's a dog and he can't talk? I mean, granted, Rugrats fans have wanted for a long time to hear Spike talk, so it's. And I wonder if the writers had ever thought to themselves, what would Spike say if he could speak? And then also you have the adults working together. I mean, you have Marianne working with all the Rugrats adults crew and working specifically with Stu, and like you get a lot of great vibes stuff there. And at the same time, I felt like maybe they should have had the bathysphere sequence earlier in the film. I mean, granted, I think the bit with Angelica at first just not wanting to have anything to do with the babies when they go off, and then like wanting to run away and back to the campsite when she realizes they are lost, and then when she finds out that series after them she wants to rescue them and commandeers the bathysphere to do so. I mean, granted, it's a good arc for Angelica in this movie, and I appreciated it, but then like something like you have. Well, a lot of fans complained about how Susie was barely in the first two movies. You have her in this one, and yeah, there's no reason for her to be here. She barely contributes. She's supposed to be the voice of reason with the babies. She's supposed to be the one who can give them the answers and the one who won't lie to them and manipulate them the way that Angelica does. But at the same time, and I understand the fact that she can't give them the answers this time because she, much like them, is very much out of her elements. But then again, you could do that with any of the other babies. You don't have to do it with Susie. And if anything, she just exists just to go along with things the way the babies do and give Angelica a hard time whenever Angelica's being difficult or Angelica's trying to do something right, but then doing it in a way that she doesn't agree with. And it didn't work. It really didn't. But again, I love these characters, both the Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys, and they feel like the same characters. So the fact that while this movie is haphazard and kind of all over the place, and at the same time still has that factor working for it. I felt like if maybe they'd had the Convy be stranded longer and they'd had Nigel regain his memory sooner and other things happen, I think you really could have brought so much more out of this than what you did. I mean, granted, it's not supposed to be overly complicated, but I think it could have really benefited from having more things happen that could have driven the story to not be as fast as it did. And yes, this is a more blatant musical as well than the first two were. They had moments where characters sang, and at the same time it was kind of a situation where the scene called for it. I mean, there were a couple occasions in the first Rugrats movie where maybe it wasn't necessary, but at the same time it wasn't intrusive. Here, it feels intrusive, and it doesn't really seem to be set up in any other way than just, hey, it's a colorful animated film, we need it to be a musical. Still, like I said, there is such an appealing factor to the film in the sense that it is wanting to tell the story and tell it in its own way, that there is something to admire and appreciate about it. And there is that nostalgia factor there too, both based on Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys. Well, I think that this is a crossover film that could have impressed more. I think that what it did offered just enough.